Hi, welcome back again. I'm discussing Module 4, Understanding the VUCA Environment. I'm Dr. Prabhakar Ghantasala, Associate Dean, School of Business, Southern Connecticut State University. And we'll be discussing Module 4, Understanding the Environment that is characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The module has an overview with learning objectives, understanding the VUCA environment navigation, and developing strategic responses towards facing uncertainty in the business world. So these are the two learning objectives that we have for Module 4. Now, how do we understand the kind of nature of environment, business environment that organizations have to deal with? They are described by four letters: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's what we call as the VUCA. And volatility. Definition: suppose we have a rapid and unpredictable change that is facing the organization. It's quick and it's pretty unpredictable, and that's what we call as volatility. In such a case, what is required for organizations to engage in is agile planning. The organizations have to be quick, very fast towards adapting quickly because the changes that are happening in the environment are pretty rapid and are also unpredictable at the same time. Agile planning is required, and agile leadership can provide that. Suppose if the organizations are faced with an environment that's pretty uncertain, unclear present, as well as unclear future, what responses can an organization engage in? They can create a scenario planning. Agile leadership can engage teams, members, and data in ways that you can create scenario planning to face unclear present and unclear future as well. Scenario planning could involve creating multiple scenarios in which the right strategies could be affected. So you could have a pessimistic scenario, a realistic scenario, and an optimistic scenario that organizations can look at and then plan accordingly, for which, of course, you need to collect data, validate the data, go for further data collection, make sure you have done enough of research so that you can try and attack the points of unclear present and unclear future, create several scenarios, discuss the pros and cons of each scenario and the consequences of having to choose one scenario over the other. This way, you have a very well informed, clearly thought of kind of decision making, and where you pick the right kind of scenario and implement the strategies and overcome uncertainty for the present as well as for the future. If organizations have to deal with complexity, that means that they have to deal with multiple interconnected factors, factors that are way beyond an organization's control, some factors being under the organization's control. It's pretty complex. Like, for example, global supply chain challenges that affect every organization out there: small, big, large, startup companies, multinational companies, everybody's affected by the global supply chain challenges. In such cases where organizations face multiple interconnected factors called complexity, the response could be a systems approach or a systems thinking approach, where you understand that each of the subsystem is equally important while facing certain uncertain situations that are to deal with complexity. And obviously, if you have a systems thinking approach of interconnectedness and interrelatedness, then it's much easier for you to face this scenario and make sure you're able to tackle the scenarios properly with using an interconnected, interdependent approach of systems thinking. The next situation that an organization could deal with is ambiguity. When a situation presents unclear cause and effect relationship, for example, social media impact on brands, the kind of response that an organization can choose is experimentation. Obviously, experimentation would require you having to try something new, something different, because you have no clear understanding of what is the cause and effect. If other organizations that are in the competitive space are using similar strategies like social media to create a positive impact on brands, you might want to slowly begin experimenting the use of social media and digital platforms, trying to promote your products, creating brand awareness, and making sure organizations understand the impact of social media impacts on brands. You might want to experiment in a small way to begin with because you are still unclear about the cause and effect relationship. There is ambiguity in the environment. And if the experiment pays off, then you can scale up your investments into social media impact, as an example in this case. So that is how you define volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And each of them have different kinds of responses like agile planning, scenario planning, systems thinking, and experimentation. What agile leaders should understand that these are just pathways, these are just frameworks for you to choose and pick and choose a response in a given scenario when faced with volatility or uncertainty or complexity or ambiguity. But this is not an exhaustive list, and obviously, out of your experience, out of your understanding of the business environment, you can pick other appropriate responses to deal with this kind of environment. I would strongly recommend for you to watch a video understanding volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity by Harvard Business Review. It's present on YouTube, and you can definitely watch it to benefit from watching the video. Real world examples of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Say COVID-19 response, that's a classical case of a VUCA example. An example that we can discuss here is Pfizer's vaccine development. It was pretty much rapid, having to face crisis. The world was facing a crisis. Pfizer had a responsibility to develop the vaccine as quickly as possible. So there was rapid innovation as well, and plenty of global support and global collaboration for making this happen, testing out the vaccine, ensuring safety so that the trial runs can be properly done. It'll match with the number of trial runs that have to be required for a vaccine to be approved. And this is what Pfizer did as a response to COVID 19. Another example, real world example, is digital transformation towards market adaptation and creating business models that are very innovative. The example could be Disney Plus's launch of digital transformation and streaming. It's a classical example of how Disney has been so successful in launching content, movies, and other stuff, and pursuing digital transformation and streaming, and not just staying focused only on their entertainment and theme parks. Another real world example is climate change response, where you might have to require long term planning and a visionary kind of leadership to tackle something as big and complex as climate change. An example could be Shell's energy transition, which has prompted it to move from relying too much on fossil fuels and trying to be more energy efficient and move towards net zero. Another video that talks about stakeholder management leading through crisis is there on YouTube by McKinsey. I would strongly recommend for you to watch this video to understand more of real world examples that address volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in the business environment. What kind of strategic response framework should agile leaders have when faced with a lot of uncertainty or volatility or ambiguity in their environments? The basic tenets of a strategic response entail setting a vision, having a clear direction, but with flexible execution and action plan. Any agile leader understands the importance of creating a proper pathway, creating a strong vision, an inspirational vision, so that the organization can be differentiated, can produce competitive advantage, continuously create value for customers, but at the same time, maintain flexibility in action and in execution. And that's the first tenet of a strategic response framework when faced with a very turbulent business environment. The second point that's required in a strategic response framework for agile leaders is the ability to understand, use data, understand markets, understand customers, their requirements, their needs, and be able to use that understanding and market sensing and perform complex data analytics so as to be well informed while taking decisions. The third tenet of a strategic response for agile leaders is clarity in communication. showcasing your vision properly to stakeholders, energizing every stakeholder towards achieving that vision that an agile leader brings, and aligning the effort and resources in ways that can make these goals a reality. The fourth tenet of a strategic response for an agile leader is agility itself, the ability to quickly respond to uncertainty or ambiguity or complexity, and be able to do things quick so that you can shorten the time to market. And like what Zara did in its fast fashion model, they moved production to Europe, nearshoring as compared to offshoring. And they shortened the time for creating new fashion, manufacturing, production, and distribution, and making new fashion available in retail stores in less than 3 weeks. That's the kind of agility you want as a strategic response when faced with a very turbulent business environment. What could possibly be the tools that can be used while navigating a turbulent, uncertain business environment? As we discussed earlier, we could do a scenario planning wherein data could be collected, multiple stakeholders could be engaged, and using their inputs and plenty of data analytical tools, scenarios could be generated between, say, pessimistic, realistic, and optimistic scenarios. Multiple scenarios can be created with strategies to tackle different scenarios. Multiple futures and consequences can be predicted as well, and then having to come up with a set of strategies that are appropriate for each of those scenarios to discuss pros and cons and benefits and advantages, disadvantages that accompany a strategy implementation towards each scenario can be analyzed and discussed before actual picking of the right scenario planning and right set of strategies towards implementation. The second tool that can be used to navigate a very turbulent business environment is risk assessment. Most organizations have a clear risk registry. They assess risk from time to time, every activity, every initiative of the organization, as well as every functional area of management is assessed for the kind of risk that they are facing. Both systematic risk and unsystematic risk is assessed. And there are early warning systems and response protocols that are created in response to risk and trying to mitigate the level of risk. A classical example here is of BlackRock risk management, where BlackRock understands clients' risk tolerance, maps the types of risks, thinks differently, and creates a portfolio of investment for each of their clients based on their risk mapping and risk tolerance and risk taking propensity differentials that can be found out from talking to clients, engaging with clients. The third type of tool that can be used to navigate a turbulent business environment is decision frameworks that was discussed in a prior module as well. Setting goals, creating KPIs, having participative decision making and setting goals, and creating resources that are required to accomplish these goals, prioritizing the most important goals, urgent goals, goals that have to be acted upon immediately to control any kind of damage that could be caused in delay of execution. That kind of decision frameworks, the velocity of taking decisions, the velocity of innovation that can be mobilized are key tools while navigating an environment that's pretty unpredictable or uncertain. I would strongly recommend for you to watch another recommended video called Scenario Planning in Practice that's available on YouTube, which will give you a greater understanding of the kind of tools that can be used while planning for navigating such a turbulent business environment. Again, a very key important thing that you can talk of is building organizational resilience. As an agile leader, one is entailed with the responsibility of creating organizations that continue to be sustainable, competitive, and resilient in face of adversity. The structural elements that an agile leader is supposed to focus on is first and foremost creating distributed authority. A local decision making is critical when you have multiple locations and global locations. It could be for manufacturing, assembly line, procurement, transportation, other support services that are required in selling your products or services. You need distributed authority so that You understand the local markets, the local response, and the local stakeholders' requirements, and you can build in a quick response to that effect. So, distributed authority is a structural element that's required to build organizational resilience, especially if you're an organization that has multiple locations and operates globally. The second structural element that's required for building organizational resilience is the kind of information flow that's required in support of decision making, in support of understanding data, and in support of making sure that organizations continue to understand environments, build in the necessary changes, adapt their strategies accordingly, and act in quick successive time so that you don't have any delays. So information flow is possible when you have systems that can help you have real-time updates. You have a culture that supports knowledge sharing. An example would be Slack's transparent communication that created a cloud-based platform, improving collaboration and communication amongst teams, amongst interdepartmental entities, just improving operational efficiency for Slack's as a company. The third structural element that's required for building organizational resilience is resource flexibility. Like the classical examples of Toyota's production system just in time, where Toyota brings in raw material, orders enough and data, orders enough components in support of their manufacturing. That adaptive capacity is built by Toyota's just-in-time management of their manufacturing and production systems. That kind of resource flexibility is required, and you've got to be on top of the game, especially in times of crisis like the global supply chain challenges. I would strongly recommend for you to watch Building Resilient Organizations by Deloitte and also Crisis Simulation Training by PwC on YouTube to understand what are the structural elements that are required in building organizational resilience. How do you measure an organization's ability to face volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity? The one key indicator that is very essential that you can measure the kind of readiness an organization has while facing business uncertainty is response time. How quickly an organization can take decisions, how quickly can an organization implement decisions that are taken, and how quickly can you actually implement innovations that have been generated, and how quickly an organization can recover from a crisis situation, like, for example, how quickly can we react in terms of global supply chain challenges? How quickly can we react to those kind of shocks? The response time is a clear measure of whether an organization is ready to face business uncertainties. The second key metric or indicator to showcase an organization's ability to face uncertain business environments is adaptation capability. The innovation metrics, how many innovations are we able to generate, how many new product ideas as an organization we are able to create, how many patents are we able to create, the learning speed of organizational members, the learning speed of an organization as a whole, the change adoption, how quickly can change be adopted, whether it's a new technology, whether it's learning from business competition or from benchmarking practices across the market or industry. That kind of adaptation capability is a very good measure of organizational readiness. The third indicator that showcases organizational readiness in facing uncertain environments is resilience factors. Like, what are the resource buffers that an organization has built in over a period of time that clearly shows that the organization is thinking ahead of time and creating resource buffers just in case of unpredictability or uncertainty. The team capability is another measure of seeing how an organization is capable of adapting, adjusting, recalibrating, and being ready for facing an uncertain business environment. So these are key indicators which are extremely essential for us to be ready. And agile leaders always make sure they're on top of the game. They're making sure the response time is minimized, the decision speed is quick, there are no unnecessary delays, the implementation is fast, and in terms of crisis, the response rate is again quick, the recovery rate is fast, damage control is done very quickly. Adaptation capability, innovation is a continuous process. It is paced out really well Organizations are created in ways that have knowledge sharing, learning is supported, innovation is supported, change adoption is quick, change is embraced, and resistance to changes is managed really well through education and training. And resilience factors are built in, resource buffers are created, team capabilities are strengthened so that the organization stays always ready in terms of crisis. There are some common challenges and solutions that agile leaders face while creating organizations that are capable and are ready to face uncertain business environments. The first challenge comes in the form of information overload. Now, when you have a lot of data coming through, and when you have uncertain times and unclear futures, information that is passed on to organizational members or teams or key members of the organization, they can suffer with the challenge of information overload. So the solution for agile leaders is to be able to create information architecture. And a classical example is of Satya Nadella's CEO of Microsoft, creating a team integration, strong support for the kind of information architecture that's built into Microsoft's organization. That prevents excessive information that has to be processed by individuals or teams. Information is provided and offered and shared as needed, and therefore you can overcome the challenge number one, which is information overload. While creating organizational readiness to face uncertain business environments, organizations can have a challenge too of decision paralysis, for which the solution is for an agile leader to create decision frameworks, frameworks that will work for individuals, that will work for teams, and that will also help collaboration without having to duplicate work or without informational redundancy so that decision making is quick. Creating database management systems, creating knowledge management systems, having problem case studies properly stored in the database and retrieved on time, along with solutions that were created in the past, are great starting points for future decisions that can be taken without having to feel stressed out. Challenge three is the change fatigue that can overcome many organizations because they're always trying to cope with a turbulent business environment. A change is the only constant, change is a way of life, and so excessive amount of change can cause a problem of change fatigue. The solution is to have in place a proper change management process where change, the nature of change is addressed, training is provided, organizational members are made aware of how important change management is, educational systems, training methods are implemented, processes are created in support of change management, reward and reinforcement opportunities are present in support and reinforcing change, and change is a way of life and it becomes embedded as part of the culture, and this way you can overcome the third challenge, which we call as change fatigue. I would strongly recommend for you to watch the video called VUCA Leadership Summary that actually helps build team capabilities and also make sure that you're able to overcome these common challenges when organizations face an uncertain environment. There are additional resources that are pretty useful. The Age of the Unthinkable by Joshua Cooper Ramo is a good read. Anti-Fragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb online. That's a very useful resource. Online courses such as Leading in the VUCA World, Strategic Management in a VUCA World are good short courses. Communities, Strategic Management Society provides a lot of reading material and examples that are truly helpful in understanding how to create organizations that can be fully ready facing a turbulent business environment. Thank you.